Hello everyone, I'm Hussam and this is Visual Debates, a desperate try to change long emails into a more 21st century friendly content. This time I will try to tell you why I think the two-state solution is just bullshit. Okay. So we have to start by Oslo. This is not an Oslo explanation, so we'll just go very quickly to know what we are talking about. Back in the early 90s, a deal between the PLO, that's the Palestinian Liberation Organization, and the Israeli government was reached to give Palestinians partial sovereignty over the West Bank and Gaza, in exchange for the Palestinians dropping their weapons and quitting the armed resistance, if we can say. These are the Oslo Accords, in which the Palestinians will not have an army, they will be dependent on the Israeli economy, and they have to use the Israeli shekel. Israel has to take the whole Jordanian river bank, so the West Bank will be embedded inside Israel with no international borders. Fourth, although no further settlements to be constructed, already their settlements are to stay. 5. Security coordination. The Palestinian police will spy on, arrest, and deliver whoever Israel demands. No questions asked. The Palestinian state will be on around 20% of the land in the West Bank and Gaza. Long story short, it ended up with the Palestinians dropping their guns and coordinating with the Israeli security while they did not get the promised partial sovereignty. And instead of the no expansion in settlements, the number of Jewish settlers in the West Bank now reached 700,000 settlers, around 10% of the Israeli population. These settlements and the road connecting them divided the proposed Arab state in the West Bank into 155 isolated islands, with 450 Israeli checkpoints. So, before any arguments, any talk about the two-state solution, we have to be aware and acknowledge that it is now a technical impossibility. Who is going to remove 10% of the population and all these investments in the infrastructure for them? And who is going to vote for such a decision in Israel? Okay, but now let's assume the impossible happens. Is it going to solve the problem? That's what we should be discussing now. So what is the problem? Why are these people fighting? Half of the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza are United Nations designated refugees. Okay? Refugees from where? They are refugees from what is now inland Israel, who, according to the Arab narrative, and I assume common sense also, were displaced during the 1948 and 1967 wars, or according to the Israeli narratives that they fled their homes during these wars. Either way, given the terms of the agreement and the fact that it doesn't solve the refugee problem, it doesn't involve anything regarding the refugees, either right of return or compensation or whatever, we can only imagine that Palestinians accepted such a solution because it is the lesser evil, not that it is an end by itself. Therefore, we can expect for the Palestinian state, if it ever exists, if it has elections, it will bring one of two scenarios. Either people will elect whoever go against these agreements to fight for the right of return, like Hamas, for example, and then we are back to square zero, at best. Or the second scenario will be Israel controlling the politics there, ensuring that only its allies are in power, like what is actually happening now with the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, in which the will be illegal violence against Jews will not also stop. Nothing changes as well. And we are also back to square zero, but with an official anthem and a flag, maybe a chair in the United Nations. Either way, violence against Jews will not stop, and we can expect nothing less than the Israeli army going into the Arab state again, and even starting to rebuild settlements there to keep peace in the Arab state. The two-state solution is trying to square a circle. It is trying to solve the sovereignty problem while leaving the refugee problem at the heart of the conflict as if it's not there. Before discussing any possible solutions, we need first to agree on what is right. Then from it, we can move to what is possible. Because usually we jump this step. So what is right? Right now, it's the right of return. Any solution that won't give the refugees the right of return to their homeland will not bring peace. This is the heart of the problem. The right of the return is the simplest concept that we should not be arguing about, and it is very ironic that Jews now have the right of return to Palestine after 2,000 years with no questions asked, while people who have been living in the same land just a few years ago cannot even see it because of a 9 meters tall wall. If we agree that the right thing to do is to give the right of return, we can now discuss what is possible. Giving the refugees the right of return means that Israel doesn't become a Jewish state anymore. As Arabs, Muslims, Christians, and Derzis will be more than Jews in such a state. And that is the core of the problem. This is why there is a conflict there. Trying to create a Jewish state in a region without a Jewish majority by manipulating demography is just wrong and cannot end in peace. You cannot push whoever is not Jewish outside so that you have a Jewish majority and expect peace, or that time will make people forget about their homeland. We all have liberal Israeli colleagues or friends who want the Arabs to have a good life as well. But very few of these most liberals are actually willing to give up the Jewish state dream. And that's the problem. Imagine the less liberal ones. It is possible for Arabs and Jews to coexist in the same land under the same rules. Is it? Well, actually, this is now the case in Israel already. So 20% of the Israeli population are actually Arabs. So any claim that this coexistence is impossible is just a claim that Jews cannot coexist with others unless Jews are the majority. And I think this is what should be labeled and defined as anti-Semitism. Anyway, it is a fantasy if we imagine implementing such a solution, Arabs and Jews living all together under the same flag, means that the Israeli parliament will one day vote for the state not to be Jewish, either by accepting refugees or by removing borders or whatever. However, we, as we speak now, have a lot of places between the river and the sea, that's mandatory Palestine, where Arabs and Jews coexist. Like Hebron and Jerusalem in the West Bank, and the Arab cities inside Israel. So instead of pushing for a fantasy that will change absolutely nothing as the two-state solution, we should push for equal rights for those living in the mixed population regions, and push for more mixing and more acceptance from the Israeli side, which is the side that has the power and control. Little by little, this will eventually end up in a full one-state solution with a lot of easing up in the tension with every step. So it's not a one-step fixes all like the two-state dream. One step at a time and more peace with each step. Steps like integrating the Arab Israelis in the Israeli society and pushing for more Palestinians to get Israeli citizenship, that's something we can push for. We should keep asking, what percentage of Israeli ministers are Arabs? What percentage of Israeli Arabs work in the government? Or even, how many PIs in Israeli universities and research centers are Arab? And we can push for more equality here. We should also push for a permanent residency for the Palestinian workers from the West Bank and Gaza who work inside Israel already, and later ask for these people with permanent residency to get the Israeli citizenship. We should push to stop trying to replace them with cheaper labor from Southeast Asia, just because this cheaper labor will not have an attachment to the land. This is where we should push. We should push against the settlers' violence and ask for Palestinians living in the mixed regions to get integrated in the society little by little. How can we tolerate formal violence based on religion or ethnicity in the 21st century in a place that is supposedly a developed country. We should push for the Israeli education system to be more inclusive. How can we expect any peace if the Israeli primary school students get taught the first thing that Palestine was an empty land, and then a few decades ago the Jews went there and started a civilization? How can they accept the other? How can they accept that these people used to live in that land? How would they respect them? We should tell our Israeli friends, colleagues, and acquaintances that you have to accept living with others, and that the solution is not a Jewish state. The two-state solution is definitely not a step in the right direction. It is going to be a wasted effort at best. Actually, almost everybody knows by now that it is breached by politicians to absorb the enthusiasm or anger of those who care, while knowing that it is a fantasy, and that is just bullshit. And that is what the resigned UN secretary said in his resignation letter. On the other hand, the one-state solution is an extremely hard solution that will take decades of hard work, decades of pushing against 1.5 centuries of efforts to create a religion/ethnicity-based state. But if you are already pulling a tooth, pull the one that will relieve the pain. Don't pull a random tooth. That's how we bring down an apartheid. By inclusion, by education, not by separation. Okay, this was a try to move from writing a long email to a more friendly content. Please let me know if you would prefer if this format is changed, if you prefer we go more in depth, it's longer, or if you prefer that we make it more brief, shorter, or if you prefer the long email. Either way, thank you for listening if you listened, and Happy New Year.